Wildman. You are listening to the soft, dulcet tones of Mark Wildman on the Mark Wildman YouTube station? Station? Channel? Are we going with station or channel? I don't know. Okay. Here we go, guys. Sorry, we are 5 minutes late on getting started here. Apologies for that. Small technical issue with the mic. But we're getting better at this, and we're going to continue to get better at this every day. Let's go ahead and hit up our first question. Our first question was, what exercises do I recommend for elderly people? And the answer to that is it's kind of the same exact answer that I tell people all the time. It is 5 moves of kettlebelling instead of 6. It is the swing, which is probably the greatest exercise you can teach anybody. And it's the first exercise I teach everybody, regardless of age. You will be operating at a lower weight, but swings, clean and press. A lot of times elderly people will have problems with the press portion of the press because elderly people tend to have more collapsed forward shoulders. So we have to then start teaching them more mobility training to get them to the press portion, but swings and cleans. Where are elderly people the weakest? They are basically just like a lot of young people now. A lot of young people never grew up with sports. So ironically, training young people and older people is kind of almost exactly the same now. You focus a lot on hip hinge first and glute activation because a lot of people don't have that at all. Elderly people tend to lose glute activation and then they have back pain and they start to round forward. Elderly people move towards flexion. When we are born, we are in flexion. So think about if you mimic standing up and you say stand like a young person, you stand in extension. You extend your knees, you extend your hips, you extend your spine, you stand all the way up, and then we want to get to basic shoulder extension, which is pure overhead. As people age and they get hurt, they usually get a cumulative injury cycle, which is what we call aging. People get hurt and then their body compensates and they use another muscle because they keep living life. And they tend to then move more and more and more towards flexion over time. So the first exercises we teach people are extension exercises. Hip extension is swings. It could be a kettlebell deadlift, which builds into a swing, a clean, which is hip extension, and press, which is shoulder extension. If they can't get towards press, then we will start teaching them things like halos, which will trick people into getting into shoulder extension, but rotating around the problem instead of trying to just hammer the problem straight away. So swings, clean and press, and I always teach deck squats. I see that there has been some controversy on the concept of deck squats on YouTube. Some very angry gentleman overseas making a video about how I'm murdering people. I don't know. But I teach deck squats or elevated deck squats to elderly individuals because how do elderly people get hurt? They fall. And when they fall, they break their hip. The reason they fall and break their hip is because they've only been squatting to a certain height. And once they get below a certain height, their core shuts off. They lose all ability to control. And then they fall down and they land on their hip and they break it. It's pretty obvious. So our goal is to get them to move into a greater range of motion so that they can control themselves if they slip, getting closer and closer and closer to the ground. It's exactly the same reason we teach deck squats to people in film. In film, a pratfall is where you would like slip and you would basically do a single leg pistol into like a judo break fall on one side. And this is used in comedy ever since the advent of film. So there are versions where you just straight up jump up in the air and land on your back. But the most basic version of it is kicking one leg up, doing a single leg squat and falling down and then acting like you're hurt. We want to have control through those full ranges of motion. So we train our more elderly clients exactly the same way. We want them to have the fullest range of motion possible in their squat, and then we want them to stand all the way up, extend the knees, extend the hips, extend the spine, extend the shoulder, because because those are the things that are going to help them the most with their posture, which is going to help them the most with their daily life. Elderly people don't really need to do bench press. I don't know why everybody thinks everybody needs to do bench press. A small fraction of the population should do bench press. People who need to look tough and people like maybe football who need to push people directly in front of them off. Everybody else should be doing overhead press. And then moving that into something better, single side overhead press, so that you get more core activation and stability, because the majority of loads in the real world are offset center of mass loads. You pick up a baby on one side of your body, that's an offset center of mass. You carry groceries in one hand, it's an offset center of mass. You carry a suitcase through the airport, it's an offset center of mass. So we always want to move towards things that we see happening the most. So training elderly clients is just like training everybody else. The weights are lighter and the program might be longer, but the goals are the same. Extension of the joints is what we are looking for, offset center of mass, and then moving through suitcase carries to rack carries to overhead carries. And then single arm clubbing to institute rotation back into the body. When you lose the ability to rotate, you get very stiff. That's a problem. So we want to make that not a problem anymore by working on our single hand club training. Inside circles, outside circles, shield casts. Shield casts will force people to extend their shoulder all the way and stand all the way up. And it could be two hand versions of it, moving towards single arm versions of it, so that we can make sure that the weak side is as strong as the strong side, so that we can make sure we balance out. When people are older, they get a cumulative injury cycle, and one side of their body is always stronger. Anybody who's ever had a knee injury is well aware of this fact, that you shift away from your injured side and you shift to your strong side, and then the strong side starts to get hurt from overuse. So that was a good long answer to that question, but it's a good answer. Next question from Will Mark. Mark spelled with a C, not a K. How do you know when to increase kettlebell weight? When you have reasonable technique with a lightweight. Terrible answer. I know. Depends on how many weights you have available to you. Once again, terrible answer. I know. The reason I always recommend people buy 3 weights is there is a very specific way that I rock back and forth between heavy and light, which is, I'm not sure if our heavy light programming video came out already. I think it did. You cycle back and forth. Usually I don't wait that long to start jumping between heavy and light. Usually I will give somebody 5 workouts at the absolute lightest weight, which gets them through the first little section of training, and the numbers start to change for the lightweight, and then I jump immediately to the heavyweight, and I start cycling back and forth between light and heavy. What I consider to be a reasonable jump between light and heavy is 4K. For the ladies, I would consider it to be 2K, which is not that much weight. So I don't think I really defined this, because there's a bunch of answers to this question. Originally, we had light, medium, heavy, which was for men, which was 16, 24, 32, and I recommend much smaller jumps than that. I recommend 16, 20, 24. And those are only 4K jumps, but a 4K jump is really an 8.8 pound jump, which is actually fairly substantial, nearly 9 pounds. Think about it, kind of like 10 pounds if you just want to make it easy in your head. The jumps are still pretty substantial between a 35 pound weight and a 44 pound weight. So crap. What was I just talking about, Taylor? Light, heavy, light, medium, heavy. When do you know when to jump? The answer is pretty soon. If you only have one weight, you're not going to make those jumps. But if you have several weights available, then you are going to start jumping really soon, because it will definitely help you become more efficient. So there's a weird idea here that we're always trying to rock back and forth between. The heaviest weight you've ever used is always the heaviest weight you've ever used. So if you have a 16K kettlebell and it's the only one you've ever used, 20K kettlebells will feel heavy forever. If you do 5 workouts with a 16K and then you throw in one 20K workout, then when you go back to the 16K, you have tricked your brain. It's a neurological trick, which tells you that that 16K isn't really all that bad. And when you start rocking back and forth between 16, 20, and 24, that 16 starts to feel much better. It's a psychological trick to convince you that that light weight is not the heaviest weight you've ever used. Very simple neurological trick, works very well with everybody I have ever trained. I've never seen this trick not work. That's the point of jumping back and forth between heavy and light. It makes the heavy day. Heavy day has lower reps, which seems like a break. And light day has higher reps, which also seems like a break. You're tricking people into thinking that they're always having an easy day and it's always a break, which makes people psychologically more inclined to actually do the training. If you just rack up super heavy weights every day, people are unlikely to want to do it. So if you just have one 24K and you do 24K every day and you're trying to progress infinitely through 24K, it gets psychologically very hard on people. If you have a 24K and a 16K, you do a 24K one day, a 16K the next day, and you rock back and forth. That 16K day seems not that bad, which is kind of the point. If you can make it seem not that bad, then people are more likely to do it. It's all a neuro trick. It's all a neurological trick. Next question from Naji Shaihati. What is the difference between a steel mace and a steel club? Very much length. A steel mace is very long. And if you were to hold a steel mace at the bottom of its handle, you would not be able to swing it purely laterally because it would slam into the ground and crush your toes. A steel club is much, much, much shorter, but it has a greater concentration of weight. The way these things are used is pretty differently because of the way that the mass distribution is used. I tend to use heavy steel maces for much more complex movement. It's much easier to change hands and do all kinds of fun flippy stuff, but that releases you from being forced into time under tension. Being forced into time under tension is the thing that really makes clubs unique. You can force people into time under tension, and you can get a lot more control out of that lateral swinging and then those yawing movements of the spine, which I find so useful. So I use heavy clubs and steel maces in very, very, very different ways. I use heavy clubs more as pure strength training. So think about kettlebells as being very heavy with a lower complexity. Heavy clubs as being very medium complexity and intermediate weight. And steel mace as being very high complexity with low weight. You can use very heavy steel maces, but I don't super see the point. If I'm using heavy maces, I only really use them to do 360s, which are essentially kettlebell halos with a really long lever. But they're not really great for flag presses and everything else like that, and they're not great for lateral swinging because of the way that the weight is distributed and everything else. So yeah, I use them very, very differently. The length is different. The complexity of the movement is very different. The progression that I use is entirely 100% different. You could do all of the heavy club stuff with a steel mace, but just doesn't work out It doesn't work out the same way. Next question from Hum O. What are your thoughts on kettlebell sports versus hardstyle? I got a billion thoughts on this. Hardstyle is easier to learn. And it helps people much, much, much more in the beginning for the first, 3 to 5 years of training. I rarely, if ever, teach sport style because sport style is a brutal, god-awful slog. If you want to be a super badass athlete, then sport style is for you. So let me change the way I say that. Sport style, if you are combining sport style with some other extremely complex physical sport training. So if you were, let's say, what's a good example of this? If you were like, no, that example doesn't work either. Let's just go back to hardstyle. Hardstyle teaches you very simple things. So in hardstyle, you learn pure presses and you learn single hip dip, cleans, and swings, which are much more like jumping, but like box jumps. Gives people much more just plain explosive power. If you were training for, say, like to do a ton of push-ups, then sports style would be an awesome thing to like work on, because if you're doing double long cycle, which is double kettlebell, like clean and jerk, both shoulders are engaged and both triceps are engaged and the chest is all engaged equally and there's no out. And then you're training just pure time under tension. So the reason sports style guys tend to just have their push-up numbers go up on accident is because they are subjecting all of those muscles equally to the same amount of tension for the same amount of time and teaching them to work in a coordinated fashion. If you have very, very limited time, if you say are training for, I don't know, let's just something weird like stunts or something, or dance, and you have an hour and a half of hard, super complex athletic training every day with tons of get-ups built into it for some reason, like modern dance or like stunt training, hitting the ground and getting up over and over, then sports style is a great option because it's extremely limited in time and it's going to create just straight up load and cardio. For the most part, most people aren't training to that super high level in like dance or stunts or whatever, or aerial or circus arts. And they need to have their complexity built into their kettlebell training, which is what hardstyle does very, very well. I love hardstyle because they're just philosophically different. So today I did a bunch of cardio on the VersaClimber, which was awful, like 750 feet sprints. And then I chased it with a 15-minute, essentially hardstyle cardio session, which was 6 presses, 6 windmills, 6 step back lunges, set it down, dry off your hand, go to the other side. And you can write a different one of those every day so that you're constantly just shifting the load. And so that would really be like that thing that I hate so much, muscle confusion. It's not really muscle confusion, but it's just straight up training confusion. You're subjecting yourself to different loads in different ways every day. Sports style guys tend to practice a couple of things and get super, super good at them. So they're just different. Sports style is just hard to get people to do because there's no way out of it. 5-minute sets are awful. 10-minute sets are, you're asking, it's like asking somebody to get on a VersaClimber for 30 minutes. It's a crazy mental and emotional commitment to get people to do sports style. And almost nobody I train needs sports style. So I focus much more on hard style because teaching people basic hard style swings and teaching people clean and press is where they're going to get their most benefit. If you're trying to jump right into teaching them long cycle clean and jerk, dude, they're going to leave immediately because it's awful. And it's also a double swing with a double jerk at the top. It's a double hip bounce. There's so much extra complex hip movement in it. And so in the beginning, I try not to fry people's brains with something like that because they will quit and you will never see them again, thus destroying the purpose of actually being a coach. You will have messed it up quite a bit if you just try to do that. If you are a very self-motivated athlete, then sure, go for soft style. Most people are not that self-motivated at all. Next question from Andrew Orthober. What are your thoughts on a simple daily type program like Simple and Sinister? Simple and Sinister is the old hardstyle program from RKC, I believe. Swings twice a week and Turkish get-ups twice a week. It's great. It's very simple. I made a whole video called Nerd Math, just justifying how you could actually get a shit ton done in 10 minutes. If you do Turkish get-ups nonstop for 10 minutes and you have a heavy day and a light day, on the light day you move faster, you get more reps. On a heavy day, you get fewer reps, but you stay under tension. You're still under tension for 10 minutes. Just being under load for 10 minutes is hard. That's a ton of work. Same thing with swings. If you just start trying to stack up until the point where you can do 10 sets of 20 And if you don't have a heavier weight, you just build up to the point where you do 10 minutes of nonstop swings. That's great. Just doing 10 minutes of nonstop swings will give you a lot of the things you need to be very healthy. Will it make you Arnold Schwarzenegger? No. If you want to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're going to have to do a lot of bodybuilding stuff. But most people don't want that. Most people just want to be healthy and function better and not be in pain all the time. So I think Simple and Sinister is a great program. I would add a couple things to it, but I have more time. But if you're very limited in time, it's a great, great, great option. Next question from Alexandru Pinten. Oh, sounds very Eastern European. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but I do love the Alexandru. Sounds a little Romanian to me, but it's good. I got into kettlebells, and I love it so far. My sport of choice is rock climbing. Any recommendations to assist with this? All the best from Romania. He is from Romania. I know my Romanian names. Rock climbing. Man, you're already doing a super, super complex, never repeating sport. That is a great sport. And I would recommend that you just work on your fundamentals and you start stacking them up. You work on your 6 basics, and then, yeah, I wouldn't really recommend you do like heavy clubs or something because your hands are already just getting slaughtered every day with rock climbing. So I would work more on heavier bells with lower reps because you're already doing an extreme endurance activity, it's endurance hand training essentially, and you're just slamming the crap out of those hands. Yeah, so I think that just doing heavy kettlebells in limited time frames would be great. Something like Simple and Sinister or a pure clean and press program would be absolutely fantastic for that. Yeah. Hold on, guys. Let me get my headset reset here really quick. Let me try something real quick. Hold on, guys. Let's see. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah, okay, it's still going. Sorry, I just needed... Hey, Taylor, we got a power issue here. Yeah, so let's work on another question here. From Fabio Fusaro. Hi, Mark. Love your videos. Thanks, Fabio. Could you give us some updates on the hydrocore? Would you consider something similar to a beginner? Would I guess that's maybe recommend something similar to a beginner? I love the hydrocore. It is super fun. I've been doing a lot of playing with it. It's good, Taylor. I've been doing a lot of playing with it. And I tried a couple of things. The first thing I tried was just because the weight is relatively low, you can, if you load up a hydrocore all the way, I think they go up to about 40 pounds, and I can operate a 55, 60 pound club, no problem. And I was like, the weight's half. Let's see if I can just build up to 30 minutes without letting go of this thing. And I'll do one exercise for a minute, and then I'll change complexity every minute on the minute for 30 minutes. And that was really fun. And I got to about 24 minutes before it became absolutely untenable. And I was like, wow, this thing is kicking the crap out of me. So I weighed my hydrocore, and I'm at about 24 pounds. But the thing with hydrocore, it's not a problem. It's an interesting design note. The hydrocore doesn't have kind of the same rest points. It moves faster. And I think it moves about 25% faster than heavy clubs at a medium weight move. So in a minute, if you're doing a club two-handed hammer swing with like a 25-pound club, which is kind of an intermediate coaching level activity, you're going to be pushing 25 to 30 reps per minute. If I remember off the top of my head, with a hydrocore, you're pushing 44. So with the weights being very similar, but with a club, there's kind of a resting point at the top where you can kind of lock your joints for a split second and take a little bit of a break by just resting on your skeleton. With the hydrocore, you can't do that because it's not a solid object. it would fall on your face if you tried to use that method. So it moves much faster. So you find yourself accelerating through the movements in different parts of the movement, and the rests aren't really rests. They're pretty brutal. So I changed my tack on the hydrocore, and I started playing with two or three other formats that I really like. Um, but yeah, I sat down and I wrote a 4 level 28 movement program in like a day after playing with it for 2 months here. And I just have to call Hydrocore and ask them if they would allow me to do something like that. Yeah. So Hydrocore, awesome. Absolutely love it. Super fun. It is definitely on my recommended list now of things that you probably really should have. It's relatively inexpensive. I just looked today. They are sold out for the third time in 7 months. But when they come back up, I would go ahead and sign up and be notified. So there's a link behind under most of my videos, I think, and it should take you to the Hydrocore thing. And get on the email and get one of those things when they become available. 100%. It's absolutely great money spent. It's one of those brilliant inventions that I'm really shocked that nobody thought of first. And the guy who created it, kudos, kudos to you for going through the design process and then getting it manufactured and bringing it to market. It's a great idea. It's absolutely awesome. And once again, it's one of those things you could do in a fifth floor walk up in New York, no problem. And you can, what's even better about it is you can dump all the water out of it and shove it in a carry-on bag for that, 4-day trip that you have to take. Steel maces, can't take it on the plane. Heavy club, you got to check it on. Kettlebell, you're not going to pay the money to take it on. You're just not going to pay it. They won't, most kettlebells are so heavy that you can't even get them on the plane without paying the overage fees. So the Hydrocore is a great, great, super badass idea, and I absolutely love it. Next question from Anand Neal. Steel clubs versus Indian wooden clubs, considering they are the same weight, which is better? Uh, Interesting thing. Wooden clubs, because the mass of wood is extremely different, it is extremely hard to get wooden clubs in the same weights. So a 10-pound wooden club is 3 to 4 times the actual physical size of a 10-pound steel club. So I don't know which one is better. Steel clubs, I was thinking about this because my friend has an entire room of wooden clubs, everywhere from 2 pounds up to 40 pounds. The 40-pound ones are so big around, they take up so much freaking space. It changes the way you do certain techniques. So I love wooden clubs, and I have a pair of fancy Indian clubs over here that are 3 pounds that I played with for an hour the other day with my friend Viva. She wanted to work on fire dancing stuff, and wooden clubs are pretty close to fire dancing. But steel clubs, because they're consistent, I know exactly what my programs are going to do to people, because in wooden clubs come and are normally custom made at that weight. I'm never really quite sure where the hard parts are, because I'm not quite sure how that affects the training over time. I would think that they would be very similar. It changes the technique because they are so big around in order to get the same size. Yeah, so I guess they would be pretty much the same, but it does change your technique a little bit. But I don't have a bunch of the wooden clubs lying around because they tend to be much more expensive than the steel version. And you tend to have to get the bigger ones custom made. 25-pound wooden club, even a 15-pound wooden club, is not something that you can just kind of like find very easily. They're certainly not available from large mass producers because you have to put them on a lathe and turn them and custom them out, and then because of the density of the wood is slightly different, somebody's got to take it off, weigh it, put it back on, and then mess with it until it gets to the correct mass. Yeah, so I love wooden clubs. I love hanging out with my friends who use wooden clubs. It's super fun to play with them. I just don't talk a lot about them because they're very hard to get. They are less of a common man activity right now, unless that common man is somebody who really loves clubbing. So they have put a lot of time and effort into acquiring a lot of clubs. I mean, my friend's probably got 50 pairs of those things. But they do take up an entire room. Next question from Elliot Bray. What kettlebell exercises would you recommend to supplement Muay Thai training? Muay Thai. I mean, I would go with obviously your basics, but I would work on a lot of, let's say, I haven't made any videos on this stuff yet, but rack position, alternating lunges. That's actually on the queue to be made coming up. Because of the way the position is and because of the way Muay Thai loads. And I would also do what's called a warrior lunge or a 180-degree rotating lunge to a press. That is a great Muay Thai exercise, but that's also a great martial arts exercise in general. It's on the queue to be made video-wise. It just hasn't been done yet. But what we call a warrior lunge would be essentially, and we do tons of these for movie training because warrior lunge is on in almost every really good fight. And if you watch all the Marvel movies and all the stuff, a lot of the recent stuff, the Hobbs and Shaw, you'll see this movement pattern in there over and over and over again. What movie did I just watch? Anna. That movie also has tons of warrior lunges. So think about facing one direction in a lunge position. Don't move your feet. Stand up, rotate 180 degrees and go down in your lunge, and then rotate back and forth in that movement pattern over and over and over again. And then turn that then into a kettlebell exercise by adding a kettlebell in rack position. And then you end up with an ipsilateral and a contralateral load as you go through the movement. And then if you add a press into that movement as well, then that becomes an extremely good Muay Thai movement pattern. It's a little bit more advanced. I just haven't gotten to that list of movements yet, but they're coming up. But I don't know if you guys understood that, but all the detail was there. Next up, from Adrian M. Do you know any exercises I can do to increase rotational speed to improve in throwing sports like football? Yes, I know billion. It's literally inside circles and outside circles and developing your single arm mill and reverse mill. That is the exact same movement chain pattern of throwing. The dynamics are a little bit different because if the heavier the club gets, the more you're going to have to keep your elbow in. But we do not want our club technique to be exactly the same as our throwing technique. We want it to have the exact same movement patterns, but we want the joints to be in a slightly different position. If we try to do exact throwing with a club, I do see people doing that with really light clubs, like 10 pounds and under. But I like to rack up the weight more and then separate the muscle chain training, strength training from the actual throwing technique itself. So developing mills and reverse mills through an entire single arm progression, starting with inside circle, outside circle, and shield cast would be what I would think about for that. From Jeffrey Ptolemy. Apparently, Hydrocore is currently in stock on it. Apparently, whatever I read was slightly old information. I'll have to look that up. I'm not actually super sure. We'll have to look that up and see. Apologies if they are out. But if you can get them, I would go ahead and order the crap out of that thing right now before everybody else in the world orders that thing. I think they just had an article in Men's Health or Men's Fitness about it. So that thing's about to hit the mainstream. So get it while you can. Next up, from Trollop7, interesting name. Best kettlebell exercises for sciatica, please. All of them. I'm going to relate this very quickly to concepts about cross-body stability. So things like sciatica, what you need to do is you need to crush certain muscles, get your 3.5-inch firm to hard spiky black ball off Amazon for $11, somewhere between $5 and $11. And you need to crush a lot of the muscles in that chain. So sciatica can be due to a lot of compression or muscle stress leading to other types of stress inside the body. That's a really loose interpretation of it, but that's fine for now. And cross body stability. Cross-body stability is where I think a lot of people's pain comes from, is a lack of cross-body stability. If the muscle chains aren't firing right, the body shoves all that load to one specific place, and then that gets overtrained, and then that causes pain somewhere along the line. So I would recommend you stay away from double kettlebell exercises unless they are symmetrical. And if you were going to do double kettlebell exercises, they would have to be unsymmetrical exercises. But I would say take a year, focus on single-sided swinging kettlebell exercises, and then stretch like somebody who really needs to stretch. I would hold those stretches for 2 minutes, and then I would introduce black ball in order to crush certain muscles in that muscle chain. So look up the muscle chain that runs through the sciatica line, and then start holding and crushing each one of those areas of your body for 2 minutes each time. That's a pretty simple answer without going into a super lot of detail, but that's a pretty good one. From Steve Caruthers. I'm training for a firefighter application. They tell me cardio is king. How can I do this with a kettlebell? Pick up a kettlebell and don't put it down for 30 minutes. Every day, pick 3 kettlebell exercises and then pick numbers that you can actually live through, something at 60 to 80% of what you can do, and then start stacking up. Create a 30-minute program and pick different exercises every day with a slightly different number pattern. It could be 3, 4, 5 reps. And then start stacking those things next to each other. And then you want to start building up. And then you're going to have a heavy day and a light day. On the heavy day, you probably do 20 minutes or 15 minutes. And on the light day, you'll stack up to 30 minutes. And cross-body stabilization. And lots of halos because if you're doing it just with kettlebells and you're leaving the heavy clubs out, then you're also going to want to throw in some inside circles and some outside circles there because of that axe work you're going to do. One of the exercises firefighters tend to like is a 2-handed club front press because it very much mimics that. I can't remember what that pole is, where you guys knock out ceiling tiles in order to check for hot spots in the ceiling. I trained a firefighter for a couple of years, and we talked a lot about this, and we made him the best guy, the fittest guy on his qual in his house, which was pretty fun because we didn't do anything they said to do. We just did tons of kettlebells, sandbags, and 2-handed club. And then we looked at the movements that they were required to do for their certification. We created a program around that. Yeah. So cardio is king, but cardio is also related to, it's not just, you can't just go out and run for it, because one of the things you're going to have to do is throw that big fire hose over your shoulder, and you're going to have to go stair climb, right? You're going to have to go up and down that staircase that you guys have to go up and down for test. And, what is the load that you guys have to carry? You guys have to do it in gear with your breathing apparatus on, figure out how much that thing weighs, and then figure out how much that hose weighs. And then you would have hose days in gear training. Then you would have kettlebell days. And you would be doing a lot on those kettlebell days. You would also be introducing different versions of kettlebell box step ups in order to keep training the step up action. And then you have your ipsilateral rack load, your contralateral rack load, your 2-handed front load. And then, I'd probably throw in some sandbag training as well. And if you could get your hands on a VersaClimber, I would totally get your hands on a VersaClimber and start throwing that hose over your shoulder and working on short VersaClimb sessions. I would figure out how long it takes you to do the staircase portion of your test. And then I would start training on a VersaClimber for those amounts of time. If you're going to do it with just pure kettlebells, I would do the same thing. I would have one day that's long, like 30 minutes, and then I would have other days where I broke out how long each one of the physical tests is taking you. I'd clock it, and then I would write a program around recreating those time frames, and then I would create a light day and a heavy day for those time frames. Yeah, well, that was kind of like programming one-on-one for firefighters. Next question from Mihailo Marcetta. What do you think of doing double kettlebell exercises with uneven weights? I have a 16 and I want to buy another one. And I thought about buying a 20 kilogram one now. You can do it with uneven weights. It will introduce a really crazy core load into your body. I don't do it, but most people I train literally just wouldn't put up with that type of crazy core load. That's not something that's required a lot by people I train, but if you want to go for it, go for it. I think it would really behoove you to buy two 16s first and focus on just working on double kettlebell exercises with even loads first, because that's very predictable. You can work a single hand day, chase it with a double day, single hand day, single hand day, double day, and that's pretty good. That's a stunningly good program on accident, completely on its own. I would highly recommend you train with symmetrical load first, because double kettlebell exercises, there's so much variation in them that you don't really need to introduce that other factor yet. I like to change one variable at a time. And if you were to go from single hand 16 to double kettlebells with a 16 and 24, you have changed two very, very, very large variables. And that could end up messing you up somehow. So I would recommend changing one variable at a time: 16K single hand day, 20 hand single hand day, or 16K single hand day, double 16 heavy day, essentially. I try not to change too many variables at once, because it's very hard to predict how that's going to turn out. Yeah. All right. Next question from Jared Bercia. Bercia. Yeah, that's correct. How would you incorporate kettlebells into a running program? I am enjoying kettlebell work greatly, but I really need to work on running speed. Are there any kettlebell exercises that you would recommend to help with running? Yes, your heavy, hard style, low rep uh, swing, two hands and single hand. And then your light day would be a runner's swing. So there is a version of a swing called a runner's swing. There are about 10 actually, and runner's cleans and everything like that. So think about a runner's clean is there's a long version of it and a short version of it, which probably means there's really 20 versions of it, where you essentially put yourself into a stagger stance. So you can figure out how long your stride length is if you wanted to video yourself, and then you could set up exactly. That's getting super nerdy. You probably don't need to do that. But essentially, keep both feet straight ahead, slide 1 foot back until the shortest version of it would be the toes of your back leg being equal with the heels of your front leg. And then that would create a compromised structure. So you would now be closer to 1 point of the running stance. And then you would go back and you would start doing swings again in that position. And you would probably start your math over. And then you could have a wide version of that where then you would push your rear leg back 1 whole foot distance behind your lead leg. So it would be lead leg, 1 foot distance for you, your foot size. And then your back leg still pointed straight ahead, rear heel off the ground. And you would start training your swings and your cleans and your clean and press in those positions. Then you would change your lead leg on the next set, and it really turns into 4 versions of that, because now you have left hand load, left leg forward, left hand load, right leg forward, right hand load, right leg forward, right hand load, left leg forward, which is really 4 versions of that. But you're going to train your hip position. And when you train to the top of that swing, you're going to lock out both legs and extend your rear ankle as well. If you listen to that again and slow it down and write it down, it'll probably make sense. Yes, so there's a ton of running exercises that you can do, which simply train you into those running positions. But your most basic running exercise would be a heavier hard style swing. If you were training for like short distance running and sprint power, then you would want to match your time frames from your sprint for your event. So if it's, you know, 100 meters and I don't know, let's pick a number, 30 seconds. You would train hard style swings for 30 seconds, and you would give yourself that same amount of break time that you would want to give yourself for the actual sprints. And then you can vary that time up and down by X percentage, 25% longer break, 25% less break, and work those numbers. But, the main limiting reagent, getting a little chemistry word here on you, is the hamstring power. Most people, hamstring force absorption through the hamstring is what determines whether or not they're going to run quickly or poorly. So people with no hamstrings will run and they'll beat the crap out of themselves. But if you want to get better at running, jack up that hamstring power with explosive power-based exercises like a hard style swing, and then set your time frames close to the time frames that you would need them to be. Was that question actually about sprinting? I think I lost the question. But okay, that was a long answer on running. From John Hall, I added 2 additional exercises, pull up and dip, to the program you made in your last video. I split between upper body and lower body. Is this a solid program for an athlete? Hell yeah, that's a solid program for an athlete. The reason I tend to leave out pull-ups and dips in most of the videos I have talked about so far is not that they're not awesome. It's that most people don't have a giant kipping pull-up bar in their house. So right now, we just haven't been talking about it. But yes, that is an absolutely fantastic way to make a program work. Dips and pull-ups are quite possibly the best things you can just slap into a kettlebell program to make it into more like a perfect program. And you can cycle those. You could put the pull-ups on your press day, and you could put the dips on your swing squat day. Totally fine. You can play with that any way you want it. The goal is to maximize your volume of each exercise, and that's why we call it the Tetris of training, because if you do it one way and it fries you so much you can't live because you did a ton of dips and a ton of presses and a ton of Turkish get-ups on one day, just flip the dips to another day. Totally different types of load. That's an absolutely killer program, and that's something that we like to do when we train on season. Off season, when you're not actually required to perform, I tend to drop out everything except kettlebell, club, and mace, because you tend to be fried after you finish the season of whatever you're on. And you don't really want to work on those things. I tend to leave those for pull-ups and dips and stuff for that build up to being on season for whatever your season is, whether it's, football or soccer or rugby. But during that off season, take 3 months and drop all of that stuff out. But then as you're going back on season, go ahead, throw those things in there. Those are badass. From Mambo Jumbo. Love it. Do you think smoking cannabis is beneficial for kettlebell training? I mean, are you smoking cannabis while you're kettlebell training? Or are you smoking it afterwards? I would tell you not to smoke cannabis, but that's mostly because I don't like smoking cannabis. But I would definitely tell you to eat edibles at night to help you recover. So when you do lots of kettlebell training, people tend to get pretty beat up. And if they're newer to training or they're pushing training, you have the same problem you have in everything athletic, which is as you get closer to overtraining, your sleep cycle suffers, which pushes you closer to overtraining. So if you can take CBD edibles at night in order to get your body to calm down more so that you can sleep a little bit better, if you sleep 10% better, that's a really, really good thing. So sure, CBD it up, eat those edibles. Here we go. Next question. Ooh, this is a good one. From Michael Ryder. How do you layer in ab workouts into your cycling? Once again, on season. If you're moving towards season, then super simple idea. Pick 3 ab exercises, put them into a workout that takes a limited amount of time, something like 10 minutes. And then I usually do my training in modules because I need to know how long each thing takes. This is the idea, Tetris of training. I need to know how long each module takes because during my job, if I'm on set, they tell me you have 62 minutes. And I pick and choose my modules right there in 5 seconds because I have them all written out already to stack up to 60 minutes. And then I put the most important modules at the beginning of training. And then something like abs, which is an ancillary support module, I put at the end of training. Because if you're on set on a movie, they might walk in at 42 minutes and say he needs to walk out of this door in 5 minutes because he has to have a meeting with the director or the producer, or they need him in makeup sooner. So you have to be able to shift your programming by module. So I throw in ab training in right when you get close to, if you had a shirtless scene for a movie or something, or if you were playing football, I would throw those in right as you get closer to season. And I would take those ab modules, 10-minute ab modules, and I would write 3 or 4 of them for a week. And then I would cycle through those 3 ab exercises, and I would pull from a list of ab exercises that I know my athlete knows and that they are already comfortable with doing. I know that they're not going to mess anybody up. It's not going to trash their hip flexors. It's not going to do anything weird like that. And then you can create, if you have, let's say, 9 really good ab exercises that people are really good at, and you could write, I don't know how many programs based on that. I'd have to sit down and do the math. I think it's 9 factorial or something like that. It can't be 9 factorial. It's got to be something different. It's got to be less than that. But you can write a ton of versions of this, and then you throw them in as necessary. Kettlebells make your core strong, but the longer you do any activity, the less visual effect it'll have on you because you will get better at it. So we throw in these things that we call candy or the kicker, where you would do your whole training and you would throw in that abs kicker. Think of it like that old, what was it? P90X used to have the ab shred thing. You did the P90X, and at some point you would throw in the ab shred at that point where you could live through it. You already have to live through it. Most people don't live through ab training because their abs aren't strong. If you do kettlebells and clubs and maces, your abs will be strong, and then the ab kicker will work. If you've never done any core work and you're just using machines, which are taking the load away from your core and putting it on the machine so that you can isolate muscle groups, it's very unpredictable how an ab kicker will affect people. Very unpredictable. They could have a weak spot in their back that, it's hidden by the use of the machine. The reason we love kettlebell training, club training, is it makes everything equally strong. And then I'm really sure when they're going to live through kickers. And you could have an ab kicker, and you could have a chest kicker. You could have a back kicker. All these kickers work great if people are already in shape. They're absolutely terrible. People are not in shape to live through them already. They're not in shape enough to live through them, go ahead and dedicate that extra 10 minutes to just doing more kettlebell exercises, because the most important thing is to have your abs fire when you're standing up and moving, standing up, walking back and forth. That's where it's most important. And then throw in those kickers when you need that visual burst. Next question from Daniel Fortis. Do I have to look at the floor at the low point of the kettlebell swing, or can I keep my eyes on the horizon? This is great. This relates to a question I got a couple days ago, which I need to make a video on. Neck position during swings. Look with your eyes, not with your head. So when you're doing your swing, you don't want to do that thing at the bottom of the movement where you crane your neck and shrug your shoulders to keep your head looking forward. This is a common mistake that people make in swings, is that they try to keep their eyes looking at themselves in a mirror or something, and then they compromise their neck and spine position in order to get there. So the goal is to keep your spine generally in line, and then look with your eyes. You don't have to look at the ground, then look at the horizon, look at the ground, and look at the horizon. Keep your eyes on the horizon, but keep your spine in line with your body. Pretty simple thing, but not something that is immediately obvious to most people. Most people look with their entire head, not with their eyes, until somebody points it out to them. Once you point it out to people, they'll stop doing it. But if nobody points it out to people, they might not get that part. So look with your eyes, not with your head. From Delos101 on Instagram. How do we get private training? You can follow me on Instagram, by the way, at Mark Wildman. And you get private training by fitting into my schedule and giving me money. I mean, it's pretty standard, really. I'm pretty sure all businesses operate like that. You have to get a hold of me, which I know is a little bit harder as the number of viewers and people commenting goes up. I make an effort to answer questions in the comment section for an hour a day, but you have to get a hold of me, and then we have to set up a time. You have to actually be within a reasonable distance of LA. Hopefully we can do some seminars coming up in the future where we will have 3-day seminars. We're holding off on scheduling that until we actually figure out this whole quarantine situation. But we're also going to have probably some upcoming seminars in the UK at Sports Therapy Scotland, which is an awesome place full of super badass people up in Glasgow area as well. So private training. If you're in LA, figure out how to get a hold of me. I'm sorry, it's not super easy because I'm getting a lot of messages now, and a lot of them don't make it directly to me. But we are moving forward. Anybody can train with me as long as you give me money and you show up on time. If you don't show up on time, it gets real hard for me to justify putting you in the schedule. That's the exact same as it is with every other trainer. Next question from Omar Djevic. Ooh, it's another one of those great like Eastern European names. Would you recommend swing to elderly people for fitness? Hell yes. Hell yes. Hip extension, joint extension. Extension, underload is what people need, especially power. Power generating exercises are those things that help keep people young. So everything I do has some component of power in it. In clean and press, the clean has a phase of power, the press is a grind. A snatch is power generation. It's very hard to do a press at that 4 counts up, 2 counts at the top, 2 seconds down thing that you will do with weight lifting instead of weight swinging. You just can't do it. You have to move at the exact same speed. You have to move at the correct speed in order to make the exercise work, which tricks people into doing power generation and extension of their joints accidentally. Most of the training I recommend because if you do it long enough, it's kind of hard to do it wrong. It can be pretty hard to do something like a snatch wrong at a certain point if you get the basic points. But you can't. You can move a little too fast, but you really can't move too slow. Otherwise, the weight doesn't make it to the top of the movement. Same thing is true of something like a mill. If you pick up a heavy enough weight and you work your way through the things, there's no way to do a perfectly slow, super controlled mill with a single arm heavy club at 35 pounds. It just doesn't work. There is a correct speed you have to move at, and all of those things are extremely good for us as we get older. Let's answer 2 more questions and then open up the phone lines in the meantime here. Should I answer this question first or should we go phone line? Let's go to this question from Michael Gonzalez. Thoughts on bicep work with kettlebells? Do you find that the core 6 kettlebell workouts sufficiently develop the biceps, upper body, as well as the lower body? You will not have super jacked biceps if you do kettlebells. You will have nice biceps, but you will not have Schwarzenegger high peaky biceps unless you were to throw in a kicker. You would do your kettlebell training, and then you would throw in a bicep kicker at the end. I tend not to do that. So kettlebell guys tend to have longer, leaner arms because the bottom of that swing, your bicep is actually under load. It's just under load in a fully elbow extended position. So people, when they start kettlebell training, if they try to do bicep stuff in the beginning, will have a huge problem with their elbow joint, specifically the summation of areas in the top portion of your arm called the triple warmer. People tend to beat the crap out of that when they start kettlebelling because as they squeeze with their thumb, their index finger, and their middle finger, they activate the muscles that run through the triple warmer in their elbow. So usually you can start adding in a bunch of bicep work later in your kettlebell training. You will end up heavier in the triceps, heavier in the forearms, and lighter in the biceps, much like Greek statues. Bigger triceps, bigger forearms, smaller biceps. And then for bicep development, we tend to do on accident single arm club training because single arm club training is dominated by bicep load, whereas kettlebell training tends to be dominated by tricep load. But you will not end up with that super ripped, peaky bicep because in order to do that, you do have to do isolated breakouts. You will end up with nice, super strong arms that are very athletic and don't hurt. But if you have some reason that you have to do bicep work, I'd get one of those, what do they call those S-shaped bars that bodybuilders use that force your elbow in place, and then throw in bicep curls using that thing at the end of a workout session. where was it? I was in Scotland at Everyday Athlete, and they do a whole crazy Metcon workout, and then there might be a bicep module at the end. Everyday Athlete, great gym, love those guys. But they do something very similar. But if you're just like a normal person, you would leave that section out. If you were preparing for a visual thing, male models or whatever, then you would throw that section in. If you want to throw it in, go ahead, throw it in. Should we go to from Pradeep Ramakrishna? Boom. Great name. Rama and Krishna in the same name. The real Bhagavad Gita stuff over here. He has a hand injury, and it seems to flare up when he does club training or kettlebell front circles. What workouts can do to strengthen that plane of motion? A little bit weird question. Front circles. Are we talking inside circles, outside circles? Front circles are a different thing that are super hard on the rotation. I don't have any videos on a front circle yet, but I assume he's talking about inside circles and outside circles. The answer is drop weight. If you have a hand injury and it's flaring up over and over and over again, you're subjecting it to too much load over time. So it's an annoying answer, but that means it's something your body is stronger than some weak point in your hand. So the way that you solve that problem is by dropping weight to the point where you can work on those activities without it messing up your hand. So the weak part of your hand can catch up to all the strong parts of your hand. And this is true for every injury out there. If you have a knee surgery, you're not going to be able to just crank away on squats. You have to drop weight, reintegrate that weak part of your body in. And when I get injured, I drop to 20% of what I know I can do. And I start building it back up 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, and build it back up. You can build up quickly that way. But if you stick to trying to lift heavy weights with a weak point in your body, it's going to stay weak and you're going to get hurt. So it's going to require you to spend a small amount of money on other equipment, but you're going to have to do it if you want to live through it, right? Clubs are cheap. Kettlebells are cheap. Surgery is very, very expensive. Having had 3 surgeries, I consider myself somewhat of a well-versed person in this particular area. Surgeries are super expensive. Here we go. Let's go to the phone line. Oh, nobody's calling. So let's keep answering. Okay. Here's a question from John Morales. With Shieldcast, you say to make sure the thumb almost touches the nape of the neck. How do I purposely do that? By pushing my thumbs towards the nape, or do I relax my arm and let the club bell pull me towards it? The answer is both. You're going to have to push while being relaxed. This is not an idea that many people in the Western world, Western athletics come across. Maybe baseball players, you have to create tension while creating speed. In order to create speed, you have to relax, but you still have to create tension. So it's kind of a weird idea, but yes, you're going to do both. You are going to push your thumb towards the nape of your neck while trying to relax some portion of it. You can't relax all the way because you have to have time under tension. Here we go. We have a call coming in, so I am going to answer it. We're going to take our answer off air, but we are going to answer on air. Here we go. Oh, crap. I just accidentally killed that call. If you could call back. Sorry, I'm still figuring out this thing. We're going to answer another call. Sorry, whoever that was, my bad. Here we go. Hello, this is Mark Wildman. How may I answer your question?
Hey, buddy, how you doing? Question. I'm very new to kettlebells, less than probably 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe a month.
Yep.
And I got to it because of you just before all this, maybe a month and a half, just before all the coronavirus stuff hit. Yeah. I went and grabbed it. My gym closed down, and I'm like, okay, and I'm really loving this.
You borrowed from your CrossFit gym?
No, no, I didn't get it from. I bought one from one of the local stores up here that's now closed.
Okay, cool. So what's your
All right,
question?
all right, yeah. Where do I start with the? It's like I'll do 25 swings, then clean each arm. 10 times 5, and then standing pullovers 10 times 5, then
Yeah,
alternating halos.
yeah.
Where do I go? What do I do?
So here's an idea. Here's an
Right.
idea. Pick 3 exercises a day, and then the next day pick 3 different exercises. And on
Okay.
those days, and then the third day, you could pick 3 other exercises and then start it over again. So you could do this either with 2
Okay.
days and 6 exercises or 3 days and 9 exercises. Pick exercises, put them on that day, set a timer. So give yourself, say, whatever, 20 or 30 minutes, however much time you're doing now, and then pick a number for that day. A super easy way to do it, if it's a light kettlebell, is to get a deck of cards and shuffle them up and flip a card. And then that's the number you do that day. And you could do that you could flip a card and say have 7 reps for every exercise, or you could flip a card and have a different number for each exercise. It gets really awful
Okay.
if you accidentally flip king for front squats. That gets really awful really fast, but it's the luck of the draw. It's a totally randomized
Okay.
way to do it. And then you can go through and you can pick movements from our YouTube channel and do that exact
Yes.
same thing. I just told you, I shouldn't have told you that because I just told you how to write your own programs for literally ever. But, that would solve your
Thank you.
problem very simply. And you will accidentally write super effective programs on complete accident.
Very good.
Good.
Thank you, sir. So I only do 3 movements because I'm right now doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movements, and then 200 meters on my rowing machine, and I'm crawling out of here.
Yeah. That's
And
really
I'm a
brutal.
fat guy.
Limit it down so you're gonna end up with more reps on each of the 3 movements. And then you got a
Okay.
concept 2 rower.
Yes, sir. I do.
Good. Jump on concept 2 and do the short WOD every day as well. I tend to do my rowing WODs before my kettlebell WODs. Otherwise, I won't live through the
Yes.
rowing WODs. But what was the rowing WOD today for concept 2? I think it was 4 750s fast with 3-minute breaks. That'll take you 30 minutes, and then you set a timer for 15 to
Wait a
30
minute.
minutes of your kettlebells, and you will end up in
750 meters, you said? 4 of them?
Yeah, and that was just the one that was on there today. So you can jump on there and knock out 750 in what 750 take. It should take you about 230, right? But you've
Dude,
got a
what am I
3-minute
learning?
break. Yeah, so that's a great way. You will accidentally write the greatest program ever if you do that. Jump on,
Cool.
do your WOD every day, and then accidentally write your workout every day. I just told you how to.
Very.
You're good forever. Problem solved. All right, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
brother.
call, and have a good
Bye.
day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right. What's next? We don't have another caller on the line right now. If somebody else wants to give me a call, let's slap on another call. Nobody's calling, but we're now at our time limit here. So, okay, guys, that'll be it for today. Thanks for all the questions. Remember, you can help support the channel by watching the videos we make, liking and subscribing, all that fun jazz. Other than that, hope you guys have a great weekend, and we will see you again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, Friday at 11:15. Man, I'm starting to sound like Frasier reruns from the 90s, aren't I? Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Hello.